As we start adding more and more content to our page, it's now time to give it a little bit of structure. So in any real-world web page or web app, we don't simply place all the elements one after another. Instead, what we do is to basically group them together by placing them into semantic boxes. So, for example, here this image and the h1 together, they might be the header of our page. So let's see that here in our original app. So basically all this part up here might be the header of the app, and then down here we have the main part of the app. And so for all that, we have special HTML elements. So elements with a semantic meaning, which, remember, means basically that we use the right element with the right meaning for the right place, so for the right content. So if we have a header here, so the top part of a page, we use the header element. Okay, and sometimes it's a bit annoying when VS Code automatically closes the element, because then we have to cut it and paste it here, right? Or we could also have copy-pasted these here and place them in between the opening and closing tags. Okay, and if we give this a save now, then nothing really changed. But that was not the point anyway. The point here was simply to group these two elements together inside this box so that they have semantic meaning basically, and also so that later we can apply some styles to this. Because without these elements that belong together being basically in the same box, we can then not create layouts. Okay, so here we have the header, and then let's put this other content inside the main part of the page. And again, I will now cut this closing tag and place it here at the very end. So be very careful of where you place this. So it needs to be right after the closing tag of the list. And then when you save it, Prettier will again automatically format it nicely for you. And let's actually close down here or sidebar to see the content a bit better again. Okay, so we separated our page into main and header, which will, for example, allow us to create this space that we have between these two parts. So between this header and this main part here. Now, as you see inside the main, we actually also have two parts. So we have the list and we also have these buttons here. And so now let's actually create these buttons. Not all of them, because that's not the point here, but let's just create 3 of them. Okay, and that's actually the easiest thing in the world. So all we have to do is write button and then close it. And then simply the text. So that's all. Okay, and now of course when we click this button, nothing will happen. And that's because, as I mentioned before, HTML is really only for the content. If we want something to happen, then we need to write some JavaScript code, which of course we will do later in this course. Okay, and let's create some more here. So basically we have one button for each category. So for technology, science, finance, and so on and so forth, and then one for all of them. So technology and science. Okay, give it a save. But before we move back here, I want to draw your attention to the fact that this is also basically a list, right? So we have a list of buttons, even though once again, we don't see any bullet points here, but still semantically speaking, this is a list. And so we should also place these buttons here into a list. Okay, so now we just have the buttons side by side. And so let's create a list. And remember, we use the UL for unordered list, and then LI, which stands for list item. That's the easiest way to remember all these elements. Besides, of course, just practicing by writing them over and over again. Now, there are actually some shortcuts in VS Code so that we don't have to copy paste all the time like this. But I don't want to overwhelm you with all that stuff at this point. So let's just keep copy pasting, which we already know how to do. Great. Now, of course, we don't have the tools yet to place these two lists here side by side, because for creating a layout like this, we will of course need CSS. But at least we now have them all semantically each in a list. There's just one more thing that we can improve, which is to also put each of them in a box. So a box that has a little bit more meaning. So these buttons here, so this list, is basically like a sidebar in this app, right? And so for that, we can use the aside element. So aside doesn't really mean sidebar. It's more that it's like a secondary content. Okay, it's commonly used for sidebars though. So here aside, and then this I think is a good candidate for the section element. So this we can consider that it is a section of the page. All right. So now we need to search again for the closing tag of UL and place it right after. Give it a save. And yeah, I think that's it. So now we have basically 4 boxes here in our page, which later will be important for our layout. So we have the header, then we have the main part, and inside the main part, we have the aside, which will be the sidebar of buttons, and we have the main section of the app. So basically the list of facts. The only big part that is missing from the layout is this form right here. So this is where the user will be able to input new facts. And so let's actually code that form in the next lecture.